That night, the ballroom was lit up with golden lights and soft music. Glasses clinked and toasts, laughter echoed, and I watched my wife twirl around the dance floor in a flawless white dress, as if it were the perfect picture of happiness. But there was something about her movements, the way her eyes sparkled as she danced with another man, a guest I barely knew, that made the air feel heavier, almost suffocating. At first, I thought it was paranoia. After all, it was our wedding, the celebration of a lifetime together that we were about to begin. She laughed too loudly. Your fingers lingered a little longer than they should have on his shoulder. I swallowed the suspicion along with a bitter sip of champagne and forced a smile. Are you jealous again? She whispered as she passed me, her lips barely moving but full of disdain. That hit me like a punch in the stomach. It wasn't the first time he called me that. Jealous. Possessive. Suspicious. But that night, at the exact moment she pulled away again and he placed his hand on the curve of her back with enough intimacy to make me clench my fists, I realized that maybe I wasn't the only one in the wrong there. I watched. I needed to be sure. Every lingering look, every accidental touch that seemed planned, every muffled laugh between the two of them felt like it was tearing me apart inside. The hours passed like blades slowly cutting through the skin. When the music died down and the guests began to leave, she was still there, close to him. I tried to confront her. I asked about the man, about how they knew each other, and she rolled her eyes, calling me irrational. He's just a friend, he said, but his words carried a calculated lightness that didn't match the firmness of someone telling the truth. If you can't trust me now, maybe you shouldn't have married me. Her words left a bitter taste in my mouth, but they didn't erase the image of them together. I couldn't get that out of my head. Something was wrong. It needed to be wrong. And I needed to find out. In the following days, doubts gnawed at me like poison. I tried to ignore it, pretend it was all in my head, but every time she left the house too dressed up to meet friends, every message she hid when she received it, every excuse for arriving late reignited the fire of suspicion. So I did what any desperate person would do. I started following her. It wasn't easy. My heart beat wildly whenever I saw her smile at her phone screen while driving. I followed her to a cafe, where he was waiting for her at a table in the back. They laughed. He held her hand for too long. My eyes burned, but I couldn't act. Not yet. I needed proof. Something inside me wanted to know more, maybe to punish myself, maybe to find a reason to get out of that situation as the victim, as the betrayed man that everyone would support. But nothing prepared me for what I actually discovered. She had lied to me with frightening ease. The man she danced with at the wedding reception was not just an acquaintance. He had been part of her routine for months. Messages, calls, hidden encounters, I found it all. And the worst? I found out that some of our friends knew. They had seen the two together even before the wedding. Anger burned inside me, but with it came a chill down my spine. How could I have been so blind? I couldn't sleep anymore. I spent sleepless nights, retracing every moment of our relationship, trying to find the point where everything started to fall apart. But the worst was yet to come. My obsession with answers has led me to confront the truth in ways I could not have predicted. The lies were much deeper than I imagined. And as I thought about how to expose them, how to make her pay for what she did to me, I realized that maybe I wasn't the only one thrown into the shadow of that betrayal. The day I decided to confront her, fate played a cruel trick on us. And what happened at that moment changed everything. I prepared myself to face her, but what she did that night changed the game. When she realized that I knew everything, she tried to turn the paper over. Are you stalking me? Are you invading my privacy? Who is at fault here? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She tried to make me feel guilty. And the lover? He smiled when he found out. Like I was winning a game I didn't even know I was playing. But I wasn't willing to lose. Not after everything I found out. I had something against them. Something that could destroy them both. And I wouldn't hesitate to use it. Because sometimes when you're pushed to the limit, you discover that you're also capable of things you never imagined you could do. And that's when everything got out of control. The romantic dinner I planned to clear everything up turned into an emotional battlefield. She lied again. He appeared outside, as if he had a right to be there. The confrontation was inevitable. But what happened after that made me realize that revenge isn't always a choice. Sometimes it's a necessity. In the end, I had two options: let her destroy what little I had left or turn the tide once and for all. And that's what I did. The plan was underway. But what no one expected was that an even bigger secret would emerge before I could finish what I started. Because her lover was lying too. Not just for her, but for me. And what he hid could destroy us all. Welcome to the channel. Here, we do not support, encourage or romanticize any type of betrayal. Our stories are fictional, but they serve as a powerful warning about how infidelity can destroy lives, relationships and families. Get ready to dive into an intense narrative, full of twists and turns and overwhelming emotions. Hold on tight, because what you're about to hear will shake you. Good story and good luck. You will need it. Lucas watched Anna walk across the room with a bright smile, her white dress sliding across the floor as if it were made of clouds. There was something about her that always fascinated him. Maybe it was the way she seemed to light up any room or the way her eyes met his even in the middle of a crowd. That night, however, something different was in the air. While everyone celebrated, toasted and hugged each other, Lucas felt a slight pressure in his chest, and discomfort that he couldn't explain. He tried to ignore it, forcing himself to focus on the moment. After all, this was their wedding, the beginning of a new life. But the sensation persisted, subtle, like a distant echo of something that had no form yet, but was already there. Anna laughed, gyrating on the dance floor to upbeat music, while Lucas chatted with some friends. He couldn't stop looking at her. There was pride in seeing her so happy, but also a pang of insecurity that he hated feeling. Anna had always been outgoing, spontaneous and charming. It was part of what made him fall in love with her. From their first meeting, in a cozy cafe where they exchanged shy glances and nervous laughs, Lucas knew he was in front of someone special. She had that rare kind of beauty that didn't intimidate but welcomed, and a natural charisma that made everyone want to be around her. He, on the other hand, had always been more reserved, more observant and talkative, but with Anna, he felt different. She made him laugh, loosened his bonds, and challenged him in ways he had never experienced before. Their relationship grew quickly, but with a solid foundation. Deep conversations, shared dreams and endless nights of plans for the future. Lucas liked to think he knew Anna like no one else. He knew about her quirks, her fears, and the little things that made her happy, like receiving flowers for no reason or finding affectionate notes scattered around the house. He was sure he made her happy too. There was nothing he wouldn't do for her. But that night, as he watched her dance with other guests, something inside him began to question whether he really knew her as well as he thought he did. Anna returned to the table, laughing at something one of her friends had said, and leaned in to kiss him. Lucas responded, but the kiss seemed shorter than usual. She was radiant, as if she were floating among the guests, and he tried to keep up with her. The party continued, and the two shared moments of affection, exchanged glances and knowing smiles, but Lucas began to notice details that would previously have gone unnoticed. The way Anna would often move away to answer calls or respond to messages on her cell phone, the way she avoided standing around him for too long, always moving, always finding something to do or someone to talk to. He tried to push the thoughts away, telling himself it was just the adrenaline of the day, the excitement of the wedding. But still, the feeling persisted. As the party came to an end and the guests began to say goodbye, Lucas held Anna's hand tightly, as if he needed some silent reassurance that everything was okay. She smiled, squeezing his hand back, and for a brief moment, Lucas felt foolish for doubting. They returned home that night tired but happy. Or at least, that's what he wanted to believe. Over the next few days, the routine began to settle. Lucas threw himself into work, eager to build the life they had planned together, while Anna seemed torn between home responsibilities and her passion for dancing, something that had always been an important part of who she was. She started going out more often to rehearsals and classes, saying she wanted to keep alive that part of her that always made her feel free. Lucas was supportive, even when it meant spending more time alone. He knew her freedom was important, but he couldn't help but feel a slight discomfort as he realized how increasingly full her schedule was becoming. The weeks passed, and Lucas noticed subtle changes. Anna was more distracted, her phone seemed to always be nearby, and the moments of intimacy between them began to diminish. He tried to convince himself that it was just adjusting to marriage, that the stress and new responsibilities could be taking a toll on them both. But, in silence, something continued to bother him. He started paying more attention to details he previously ignored. The different perfume she smelled when she got home, the excuses about being late and the furtive smiles she gave while scrolling through her cell phone. Lucas fought his own thoughts, telling himself that he was exaggerating, that she never gave him reason to be suspicious. But doubt, once planted, began to grow. He found himself analyzing every word said, every expression, looking for signs that could confirm or dispel his fears. Some nights, he watched Anna sleep next to him, trying to find answers in her peaceful face, but all he felt was a growing emptiness, as if something had changed between them without him knowing exactly what. The tension increased as the days passed. Lucas tried to maintain balance, avoiding confrontations or questions that could seem invasive. He wanted to trust her, wanted to believe that everything was okay, but the signs were hard to ignore. Anna continued to leave frequently, always with plausible justifications, but Lucas began to realize that his patience was running out. The connection between them, which had previously seemed unbreakable, now seemed fragile, as if any wrong move could destroy it once and for all. Lucas clung to the hope that it was all just a misunderstanding, a passing phase. But deep down, something told him that the truth was about to emerge, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face it. While Anna continued to smile and go about her routine as if nothing was wrong, Lucas felt the weight of uncertainty growing. He didn't know what he would do if he discovered something he couldn't ignore. He just knew that, one way or another, he needed to know. And when he finally made the decision to follow his instincts, what he found was much more than he expected. Something that would change everything. Lucas woke up that morning to the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the house, a familiar scent that used to bring him comfort, but now seemed to carry a strange weight. He went downstairs slowly, watching Anna sitting at the table with her cell phone in hand, smiling at the screen. She looked up quickly upon noticing his presence and placed the device aside with an almost automatic movement, as if she had something to hide. He tried to ignore the suffocating feeling that took over his chest, but the doubts returned, stronger than ever. During the last few days, he had tried to convince himself that he was exaggerating, that the restlessness was the result of insecurities and tiredness. However, every detail, no matter how small, seemed to fuel that growing distrust. Anna seemed more distant, and even when she was present, her attention wandered. Lucas noticed the furtive glances, the discreet smiles and the increasingly frequent excuses to leave the house. He tried to remain calm, control the need to question her, but the questions were piling up in his mind. Who were those people she was always messaging? Why did she seem so happy away from him and so disconnected when they were together? He needed answers. Later that afternoon, Lucas decided to follow her. His heart beat wildly as he watched her get into the car and drive towards the city center. His hands were sweating on the steering wheel, and every kilometer he traveled seemed to make the air inside the car heavier. He felt ridiculous for being in that situation, but the need to know the truth was stronger than any embarrassment. She parked in front of a small corner cafe, got out of the car, and walked in as if she were completely at ease. Lucas parked a little further away and waited. The minutes felt like hours until Anna finally appeared at the door accompanied by a man. They laughed, and the closeness between the two made Lucas' stomach turn. He watched as the man placed his hand on her waist in a casual way, but too intimate to be just a friend. Anna didn't move away. On the contrary, she smiled and touched his arm, as if that gesture were natural, as if it were part of a routine. Lucas felt his blood boil and his hands tremble. He wanted to get out of the car, confront them right there, but something held him back. Maybe it was the shock, maybe it was the fear of being wrong and turning everything into an irreversible mistake. So he stayed, watching as the two walked away, walking together like a couple. In the following days, Lucas became a shadow. He monitored Anna's every step, every exit, every incoming call. What was once just distrust now felt like a cruel certainty that he couldn't ignore. He looked through messages on her phone when he had the chance, but most of them had already been deleted, as if she knew she needed to hide something. The few conversations he found were vague, but full of innuendo. Short, to-the-point messages that made your mind run in circles, trying to decipher what was really going on. Anna's routine hasn't changed. She continued to go out to rehearsals and events, but Lucas no longer believed any of the excuses. He tried to confront her once or twice, but her responses were always quick and defensive. She called him paranoid, insisted he needed to trust her, but never seemed concerned about dispelling his doubts. This only increased the gulf between the two. Lucas felt like he was losing control, that the woman he had married was slipping through his fingers, and he didn't know how to stop her. On one of the most difficult nights, Lucas followed Anna again. She said she was going to meet some friends for dinner, but he knew that was a lie. He saw her park in front of an inconspicuous hotel, a place that would go unnoticed by anyone who wasn't paying attention. He waited outside, watching as she entered. The minutes dragged by until he saw the same man arrive. They greeted each other with a quick hug, but enough to confirm Lucas's worst fears. Anger grew inside him like an out-of-control fire. He got out of the car and walked to the hotel entrance, but stopped before going through the door. He knew he wasn't ready to face them, not there, not like that. He turned and walked back to the car, feeling defeated and humiliated. The image of them together kept replaying in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. In the days that followed, Lucas moved away from Anna. He could barely look at her without feeling the pain of betrayal pulse in his chest. She noticed the change, tried to get closer, but he could no longer believe anything she said. Every touch felt empty, every smile felt fake. Lucas knew he was reaching his limit, that he couldn't continue living that lie for much longer. The final confirmation came on a rainy afternoon. Lucas decided to check the records on her cell phone while she was taking a shower. He found more explicit messages, photos sent and received that made clear the type of relationship Anna had with that man. The betrayal was there, in the open, and there was no way to deny it. Lucas felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The pain was so intense that he had to sit down, trying to control his breathing. When Anna came out of the bathroom, she found Lucas standing in the living room, holding her cell phone. She froze, and in that moment, he knew he didn't need anything else. Her look said it all. There were no screams, no immediate accusations. Just silence. A silence that said more than any words could. The betrayal was exposed, but Lucas knew there was still something more, something he hadn't yet discovered. And as he watched Anna try to explain the unexplainable, he realized that this was just the beginning. Lucas stared at Anna, his eyes fixed on her as if they were trying to penetrate her soul. The silence in the room was piercing, heavy like the air before a storm. Anna was holding her cell phone, her hands shaking, but without the courage to lift it again. He had seen everything. The messages, the photos, the meetings scheduled with surgical precision so that he would never suspect. But now everything was exposed. She tried to speak, but the words were lost before they came out. Lucas stood his ground, waiting. He wanted to hear, needed her to say out loud what she had done. The betrayal was there, hanging in the air like a blade about to fall. And it fell. Anna admitted with a choked voice that she had become involved with another man. There were no lengthy justifications, just the pathetic repetition that it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, that I still loved him. But Lucas knew that words could not mend what had been broken. Anger burned inside him, but what hurt most was the feeling of humiliation. He was no longer the man who blindly trusted the woman he loved. Now he was someone betrayed, exposed, thrown out of his own life without warning. Anna was crying, begging for a chance to explain herself, but he cut her off, his voice firm and sharp. He wanted to know everything. Not just about the dates and the lies, but about who she really was. Because the woman before him no longer looked like the same woman he had chosen to share his life with. So Anna relented. She collapsed before him and began to speak, each word coming out as a bitter confession. She talked about the moments she felt lost, about the emptiness that consumed her even though she was next to him. But none of that justified what she had done. And Lucas knew that. He remained still as she spoke, taking in every detail, every apology, until something in his expression changed. He asked the question that had been gnawing at him since the moment he first followed her. And that's when the real secret came to light. Anna looked away, her lips quivering, and then said that the man she had cheated on him with wasn't just any lover. He was someone who had been a part of their lives for longer than Lucas could imagine. The shock went through Lucas like a knife. She revealed, between sobs, that the man was someone he knew, someone who had frequented her home, shared dinners and conversations as if he were part of their inner circle. A friend. Or at least that's what Lucas thought. Anna continued, now almost out of breath. He said it all started before the wedding, that the two had gotten closer during the preparations, when Lucas was too busy to notice. Her lover was someone he trusted, someone who was always there, offering help and advice. And while Lucas was planning a future, they were building a secret. Lucas felt the ground open beneath him. Every shared memory, every conversation, every laugh felt like an insult now. The room revolved around him. He got up and started walking, unable to sit still. Her words kept echoing in his head. He asked why. Why hadn't he said anything before? Why had he continued with the wedding plans knowing what he was doing? Anna tried to justify it, saying that she was afraid of losing everything, afraid of admitting to herself that she had made a mistake. But Lucas couldn't hear anything else. All he saw was the image of the two of them together, conspiring while he believed he was living the happiest moment of his life. Pain gave way to fury. Lucas turned to Anna, demanding to know who else knew, who had been complicit in this cruel theater. Anna hesitated, and that was enough for Lucas to understand. Some of the people closest to them knew. Friends, perhaps even family, had seen the signs and chosen not to say anything. He felt even more betrayed, not just by her, but by everyone around him. Anna tried to touch him, but he pulled away as if her touch burned him. Lucas took the car keys and left, leaving Anna alone in the room. He needed air, needed to think. But the anger didn't subside. As he drove through the nearly deserted streets, his mind raced. Every memory seemed distorted now, every word spoken in the past seemed to carry a new layer of lies. He didn't know if he could return home. I didn't know if I wanted to see Anna again. But I knew it wasn't over. The next morning, Lucas returned. He found Anna sitting on the sofa, her eyes red from crying. She begged for one more chance, promised to end everything, to cut any ties with her lover. But Lucas couldn't believe her anymore. He said he needed time, but Anna knew what that meant. Lucas spent the next few days in silence, avoiding direct confrontations, but inside, he was planning. He wouldn't let that go without consequences. Anna had destroyed his trust, ruined everything they had built together. And now, he was the one who would take control of the situation. The tension between the two increased every day. Anna tried to redeem herself, but Lucas kept his distance, analyzing her every move. And it was then that a new detail emerged, something Lucas wasn't expecting. Among Anna's belongings, he found a key. A key that didn't belong to anything in their house. And it was this discovery that led him to a new revelation, something he could never have imagined. Something that would change everything again. Lucas held the cold key between his fingers, the metal pressing into his skin as a constant reminder that there was still more to be discovered. He was staring at Anna, who was sitting on the couch, cowering as if she was expecting a blow. Her eyes begged for forgiveness, but Lucas no longer knew what to feel. He raised the key in the air, displaying it as irrefutable proof, and asked, in a controlled voice, where that key led. Anna blinked, looking away for a moment before trying to respond. She said she didn't know, but her voice wavered, breaking mid-sentence. Lucas took a step forward, insisting, breathing heavily. He wanted an answer, needed it. Anna finally admitted that it was the key to an apartment, a place where she and her lover met. The words fell like stones into Lucas's chest, each syllable cutting deeper. He demanded the address. She hesitated, but eventually relented, writing it with shaking hands. Lucas left before he could change his mind. Anger pulsed through his veins, but mixed with it was something darker. Curiosity. He needed to see the place, needed to know how far it had gone. The journey to the apartment was made in silence. Every corner he turned seemed to take him closer to something he wasn't sure he was ready to face. When he arrived, he stopped in front of the door for a few seconds, trying to calm his breathing. Then he turned the key in the lock. The apartment was small but well decorated, with personal touches scattered throughout. Colorful pillows, a vase of fresh flowers on the table and clothes folded on a chair. Lucas felt a wave of revulsion. That space seemed lived in, used, as if it were a home parallel to the one he and Anna had built. He walked around the room, touching objects, feeling the weight of memories that weren't his. That's when he saw the photos. Small picture frames scattered around the room, showing Anna smiling, hugging her lover. In one of them, they were on a beach, the sun setting behind them. In another, they laughed together in a restaurant. Lucas clenched his fists, the glass shaking between his fingers before he put it back in place. This was not a passing case. It was something much deeper. The door suddenly opened, and Lucas turned, facing his lover for the first time. The man froze when he saw him, his eyes wide. Lucas felt his blood boil, but he held himself back. The lover tried to speak, but Lucas raised his hand, interrupting him. He didn't want to hear excuses. I wanted answers. He asked how long it had been happening, and the man admitted, in a low voice, that it had started even before the wedding. Lucas felt his legs weaken, but he stood firm. He kept pressing, wanting to know how it all started. The lover explained that he had known Anna for years, that there had always been something between them, but that everything intensified in the months leading up to the wedding. They thought it would be something brief, that it would end after Anna got married, but they couldn't stop. Lucas felt the words tangle in his throat. He asked if the man loved her. The silence that followed was the most painful response I could have received. Lucas advanced, grabbing the man by his shirt and pushing him against the wall. He wanted to scream, wanted to vent all the anger he carried, but instead, his voice was low, controlled. He warned that it wouldn't stay like this, that there would be consequences. The lover just nodded, visibly shaken, but did not ask for forgiveness. Lucas released him, turning to leave. When he returned home, he found Anna sitting in the same place, her face pale. She stood up as soon as he entered, but he raised his hand, telling her to stop. He said he knew everything, that he had seen the photos, heard the confessions. Anna started crying, begging for a chance to make things right, but Lucas was beyond that. He said there was no going back, that what they had was destroyed. But before he could finish, Anna screamed. He said he didn't understand, that there was more to the story than he knew. Lucas stopped, looking at her. Anna then revealed that there was something she never told him, something that would change everything. She said that her lover was not just someone who appeared in their lives by chance. He was someone she had a past with, someone she could never completely forget. Before meeting Lucas, they had a relationship, but it ended abruptly. She thought she had moved on, but when he reappeared, all the emotions came back. She tried to resist, but ended up giving in. Lucas felt the ground open again. It wasn't just a physical betrayal. It was emotional, something that existed before he even entered Anna's life. He turned away, unable to look at her. Anna tried to get closer, saying that she chose Lucas, that she wanted to build a life with him, but Lucas couldn't believe it. To him, everything they had shared now seemed like a lie. He left once again, leaving Anna alone. He drove for hours, trying to process everything. But deep down, I knew that nothing she said could erase what had happened. He needed to decide what he would do next, but at that moment, all he could feel was emptiness. When he finally returned home, he found Anna waiting for him. She looked worn out, like she had been waiting for hours. He said he would do anything to make things right, but Lucas wasn't sure he wanted them fixed anymore. He asked if she still loved him. She said yes, but Lucas knew he couldn't trust that anymore. He grabbed his things and left, leaving Anna crying in the living room. But as he drove, he realized that the story wasn't over yet. He still didn't know everything, and something inside him said the worst was yet to come. Lucas drove aimlessly, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The dark road seemed to have no end, and the headlights gave only enough light to keep moving. His mind was spinning in circles, trying to piece together the life that had shattered before him. Anna's words echoed in his head, mixing with the images of the apartment, the photos, the touches and smiles that he had never seen, but that now he couldn't stop imagining. The weight of what he had discovered crushed him, and the pain was mixed with a silent fury that he didn't know how to contain. He stopped the car on a deserted shoulder and turned off the engine, resting his forehead against the steering wheel, trying to find some relief in the silence, but all he found was emptiness. As much as he wanted to walk away, he knew he couldn't just disappear. There were answers he still needed to seek, questions that burned inside him and demanded to be asked. He returned home late at night, finding Anna in the same place, sitting on the couch as if she hadn't moved since he left. Her eyes were red, swollen, and her hands were wringing out a crumpled tissue. She watched him enter, but said nothing. Lucas was also silent for a few moments before finally sitting down on the chair opposite her. He started by asking why. I wanted to know how someone could spend years building a life and, at the same time, keeping a piece of themselves a secret. Anna tried to explain, saying that she thought she could bury the past, but that she never had the courage to actually let it go. She said that her lover appeared when she was most vulnerable, questioning her own choices, and that the reunion brought back feelings that she thought had already died. Lucas heard every word, but nothing seemed to ease the pain. He asked her if she really loved him or if the marriage was just a facade to hide the feelings she had for the other man. Anna denied it, but her words seemed empty, like promises made too late. The silence between the two prolonged, until Lucas asked something that had been lingering since he left the apartment. He wanted to know if Anna would have continued with the lie if he had never found out. Anna hesitated before answering, and at that moment Lucas realized that the answer no longer mattered. The hesitation was already the confession he feared. She would have continued, perhaps even for years, keeping up appearances while living a parallel life. He stood up and began to walk around the room, feeling the weight of the dilemma he was carrying. Part of him wanted to end it all, leave that marriage behind and start over. But another part, perhaps the most irrational, couldn't ignore the years they had shared, the memories, the plans, the moments when he truly believed they were happy. And there was also the fear of starting over, the fear of admitting that I had failed, that I had chosen the wrong person to love. He wondered if he could forgive her, but the very thought made him feel nauseous. Anna tried to get closer, saying she would do anything to prove that they were still worth fighting for. He said he would leave the other man forever, that he would change jobs, cities, that he would go to therapy, whatever was necessary. Lucas interrupted her, asking if she thought erasing the evidence would be enough to reconstruct what they had. Anna cried, begged, but Lucas could offer nothing but silence. In the days that followed, Lucas was torn between anger and fear of making the wrong decision. He began avoiding Anna, leaving early and returning late, trying to find clarity in the space between them. But every time I saw her at home, every time I heard her voice or smelled her, the memories came back like knives. He relived the good moments, but also the bad ones, and doubt gnawed at him. He decided to confront his lover again, this time not driven by anger, but by the need to understand. She found him in the apartment, which now seemed smaller and more suffocating. The man tried to remain calm, but Lucas saw the fear in his eyes. He asked what kept him tied to Anna, what it was about her that he kept coming back to, even though he knew he was destroying someone else. The lover tried to justify it, saying that he fell in love, that he didn't expect it to go this far, but Lucas didn't accept it. He wanted to know if Anna was lying to both of them or if he had just been deceived. The answers were vague, but one thing was clear, her lover never planned to give her up. Even with everything exposed, he still believed he could convince her to stay. Lucas left the apartment with the feeling that there was no end to it, that he was trapped in a cycle of lies and betrayals that seemed to repeat itself. When he returned home, he found Anna packing her things. She said she was going away for a few days to give him space, but Lucas realized that part of her was hoping he would ask to stay. He didn't ask. He watched her close her suitcase and walk out the door, leaving the house in heavy silence. In the following days, Lucas tried to rebuild some routine. He went back to work, met friends, but nothing seemed to make sense. He found himself looking at his cell phone, waiting for a message from Anna, but at the same time feeling relieved that he didn't receive one. He knew there was still something inside him that needed to be resolved, but he didn't know how. When Anna finally called, she said she wanted to talk. Lucas hesitated, but agreed. They met in a park, far from anything that could remind them of the house where they lived together. Anna seemed calmer, but she still had the weight of guilt in her eyes. She said she was willing to wait as long as it took to prove she deserved another chance, but Lucas knew it wasn't that simple. He looked at her, trying to find the woman he had fallen in love with, but all he saw was someone he no longer recognized. He said he needed time to decide what to do, but Anna insisted, asking if he still loved her. Lucas didn't respond. He just got up and started walking, leaving her sitting there, alone. As he walked, Lucas realized that the real dilemma wasn't just about Anna or the marriage, but about who he wanted to be after all of this. He knew he couldn't erase what happened, but he needed to decide if he was willing to carry that pain for the rest of his life or if he had the courage to move on. Lucas stood in front of the door of the empty apartment. The surrounding silence seemed to scream, echoing the memories of what had been discovered there. He looked at the key in his hands one last time before dropping it to the floor, hearing the metallic sound become lost in the empty room. There was nothing left to find in that place. Just remnants of a lie that had consumed him completely. He walked away, feeling the weight of everything he had carried up there starting to give way, but not yet knowing if it was relief or just exhaustion. The phone vibrated in his pocket, but he ignored it. I knew who it was and I knew I didn't want to hear anything else at that moment. The next few days were a blur. Lucas immersed himself in work, trying to fill the void that had been left. He stopped responding to Anna's messages and avoided any contact with his lover. I didn't want any more explanations, justifications, or empty promises. I wanted distance, but my mind insisted on returning to what happened. The image of Anna crying in the living room, holding her bags, still appeared in his head when he least expected it. He wondered if he had been too harsh, if he should have given her the chance she asked for so much, but then he remembered the photos, the messages, the sleepless nights and the anger returned, burning like fire under his skin. Anna tried to look for him a few times, but Lucas refused to meet. She left messages, asking for forgiveness, saying she loved him and couldn't live without him. But Lucas no longer believed her words. He knew that the love he felt was still there, but he also knew that it wasn't enough. Not after everything that had been destroyed. He needed to move on, and that meant leaving her behind. It was on a Sunday afternoon, weeks later, that Lucas received Anna's last message. She said she was leaving, that she needed a fresh start and that she hoped he could find her again someday, when the pain was gone. Lucas deleted the message without responding. I knew that was the goodbye I needed, even if it hurt. Anna disappeared. Mutual friends mentioned that she had moved to another city, starting a new life. Lucas didn't try to find out more. He preferred to keep his distance and try to rebuild his own life. But fate had other plans. Months later, he saw her by chance in a restaurant, sitting alone at a table in the corner. She looked different, thinner, more tired, but still with the same look that had won him over years before. She saw him too, but didn't come closer. She just lowered her eyes, as if expecting him to do the same. Lucas stood still for a few seconds before turning and leaving. It was the last time he saw Anna. The lover didn't have a very different ending. Shortly after the confrontation, he lost his job and, with it, his reputation. The photos and messages that Lucas had discovered ended up being leaked among his co-workers, and the scandal destroyed any chance he had of maintaining his position. He tried to contact Anna after she left, but she never responded. He ended up moving away too, isolated and forgotten. Lucas, on the other hand, found a way to move on. It was a slow process, full of ups and downs, but he finally started to open up to new possibilities. He met someone at an unexpected moment, someone who brought back a lightness that he thought he had lost forever. She was different from Anna, simpler, more direct, and Lucas found comfort in the transparency and sincerity she brought to the relationship. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to smile without feeling guilty. But the past has not completely disappeared. Lucas carried the scars of what he experienced, and they made him more cautious, more attentive to details. He learned to value trust as something non-negotiable and to recognize the signs he previously ignored. He knew he would never go back to being the same man he was before all that, but he also knew that that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The story of Lucas, Anna and their lover ended like so many other stories of betrayal, with pain, loss and difficult lessons. Each of them followed different paths, marked by the choices they made and the consequences they had to face. And in the end, this is what was left, a new beginning for some and an inevitable end for others. If you've made it this far, we want to know your opinion on this story. What did you think of the ending? Leave your comment and share your reflections on the characters' choices and the impact of the decisions they made. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following stories like this, which show how betrayal can change lives forever. Here at the channel, we do not support any type of betrayal, but we believe it is important to reflect on the devastating consequences it can cause. Until the next story.